All right, I got this comment from Steve G on this video, so I'm going to re-release the video, but I'm going to add a few things in here that I probably should have done after reading comments and hearing other people's interpretation of what I've said in my video. And no way have I said in this video in any way that the defense team fired Cy Ray and Brent Turvey. Okay, y'all got people that listen to this and gather that you got to listen up to the words that I say. They mean something. But even apparently Steve G has watched this video and chose to leave a comment. And he reminded me, I told you all that Cy Ray was finished over a year ago. He says that you even attempted to get Ray to comment on what I said. So I'm glad you finally figured this out. And he's exactly right, which tells me that Steve G must follow closely my videos, because over a year ago, people were saying that Cy Ray was off the case, and I didn't think so, but I couldn't verify it because we hadn't heard anything about Cy Ray. He stopped doing his podcast, and we were trying to find Cy Ray to say something, so I even went on a video and I put it out into the ether. So please give us some kind of sign. Let us know you're still on the case. So he remembers that, and that's interesting. But he says, so I'm glad you finally figured this out. He goes on to say, Turvey is definitely one of the leakers. There are others. I believe, yeah, there are definitely going to be state leakers as well that leaked, the video, the car, the cell tower information, the Celebrite pull of Kohberger's phone. So it won't just be one. If there was one of the defense experts being a leaker, there'll also be state leakers. But most of them were not subject to the gag order because they were outside Idaho's jurisdiction. I don't think that's going to apply in the administrative investigation into who leaked the information. The administrative leak is to give the judge and the defense team all the bullets they need for litigation. The criminal investigation is actually going to add some teeth to somebody actually getting charged with something. So that's where that comes into play, I believe. The gag was never about keeping the jury unbiased. Most people fell for that BS. It was about protecting the colleges from losing business. Well, I agree with you on that, Steve, 100%. I mean, the college has absolutely, when I say the college, I mean, I don't know that WSU really had much, bad press on it until y'all started suing them, but it was the University of Idaho. So unlike most followers of this case, I went on record against it. And yes, you did. And I applaud you for calling to remove the gag order. We should have had transparency from the beginning. Only problem I had with you is you would take and weaponize the gag order and go out and say you had information that was not true, and really go on channels and media and have them take your information and create a big opinion about the case that was false. So the fact that there was a gag order was BS. You calling it out was good. You weaponizing it, though, was terrible, in my humble opinion, Steve. But I did answer him. Looks like you were correct. And yes, I remember my failed attempt to get him to speak out. So I thought that was interesting. But before you watch this video, and if you've already seen it yesterday, then you don't have to watch it again. But I am going to add some more clarification here in the beginning, because I've heard a lot of people say, well, Tom Slavinsky is not a CSLI guy. He does something totally different than Cy Ray. And Matthew, I just want you to understand who these two experts are before you watch this video, so you have a better understanding of what you're actually looking at in this video. And if you watch this video really close, I think you're going to get it. But a lot of people, it's gone over their heads. A lot of people, it hasn't. It's an important video, though, because it's very important for the outcome of Bryan Kohberger's case and the litigation that he has around the leak. So pay a close attention. To have proper perspective of what's going to be discussed in this video at length, you need to become familiar with these two individuals. Bryan Kohberger, defense team crime scene analyst and crime scene recreationist Matthew Nodal joined the team 4 days after Kohberger was arrested. Had the ability to actually go in and physically look at the house, dissect the house, investigate the house, look at the blood stains in real time, everything. He'd been with the case since the very beginning. And then, unknown to us when he actually was brought on as a defense expert, but we have Tom Slavinsky. Now, a lot of people get Slavinsky mixed up with what his expertise is. His expertise is really multiple. He is cell tower analysis. He does exactly what Cy-Ray does. He's certified in Cy-Ray's track software, and he's been through Cy-Ray's training at LexisNexis. He also is a Cellebrite extraction expert, and he has the ability to take everything from a phone, not just the location, but the data on the phone, put it together as a complete expert opinion. So it's important to know that, and we're going to get to know them a little bit better before we get into the video. Defense crime scene expert Matthew Nodell, or Nodal, actually is the founder and representative of his company, Nodal Scientific, Forensic Consulting and Training. And Matthew Nodal, or Nodell, ever how you pronounce it, has over 29 years of practical hands-on forensic experience and maintains his expertise through continued education, proficiency, testing, research, and certifications. He is committed to providing unbiased forensic consultation, testimony, and training. And some of his areas of expertise are case review and reanalysis. Case review and or reanalysis involves evaluating case-related materials and determining if appropriate work was conducted. The review may also identify what additional work should be conducted, which may help reveal the truth about an event. With over 29 years of broad-based experience in forensic science, Matthew Nodal can review case data and help you understand scientific reports and data collections. Bloodstain pattern analysis. The evaluation and examination of bloodstains at crime scenes is often overlooked and misunderstood. Bloodstains can exist on clothing, walls, hidden behind baseboard, or under carpets. Do not underestimate the significance of bloodstains. Matthew Nodal can assist with the interpretation of bloodstains and associated with a crime scene. And then finally, crime scene reconstruction. Crime scene examinations are not just limited to house, large outdoor scenes, vehicles, residences, and other locations that may contain evidence should all be evaluated. The reconstruction process offered by Nodal Scientific, LLC, takes a holistic approach to an event and incorporates the evaluation of police reports, witness statements, laboratory reports, and medical or autopsy data to scientifically test the theories developed by various agencies involved. Additionally, Nodal Scientific LLC can also analyze 3D renderings captured by law enforcement agencies and other entities, or actually go on scene and collect 3D renderings.
I'm interested in how you first got started. So I know you were at the Washington State Lab. Were you doing crime scene reconstruction right from the beginning, or did you sort of migrate over?
Pretty quickly after starting with the State Patrol, I became a member of the crime scene response team as basically as a student mentor. I was mentored by the senior members of the organization. My career actually started a few years prior to that, where I was working in a private laboratory in forensic toxicology. In the toxicology lab, we didn't do a lot of reconstruction, and we certainly were not doing shooting incident reconstruction. But I got out of that job and right into the Washington State Patrol, where I was doing chemistry and trace evidence analysis. And an opportunity came up with the crime scene response unit, and I took that responsibility on as well, and have been in that continuously ever since. So I'm about 30 years into the field of studying crime scenes and primarily shooting reconstruction and how to reconstruct events that have involved the discharge of a firearm.
Okay, so the company would be Cellular Forensics LLC, and the founder of Cellular Forensics LLC is Tom Slavinsky. And what he specializes in, and you can see high profile case, Idaho 4, Kohberger defense, Digital DNA is involved in nearly every legal case today. Cell tower data can place a person at a scene or prove they were never there. Tom Slavinsky. And Tom Slavinsky, formerly a law enforcement officer, licensed digital forensics examiner, DOJ certified mobile forensics instructor, and now exclusively serving criminal defense. Tom Slavinsky spent years training law enforcement on how to collect, analyze, and present cellular evidence. He knows every protocol, every shortcut investigators take, and every way evidence can be contaminated or misinterpreted. Today, he brings that insider knowledge to defense attorneys across the country, challenging the state's narrative with precision and authority. So, what is his specialty? Cell site analysis from call detail records. Welcome to the future of cell tower forensic mapping. So, as you can see, Mr. Slavinsky here does exactly what Cy-Ray does, and more importantly, he even works on Cy-Ray's software and talks about his certification with LexisNexis and the Track software. So he does exactly what Cy-Ray does. And let's listen to Slavinsky actually testifying in a court case in 2019.
Just so we're clear on this, what you're telling the jury is that at 9:36 a.m., Brenda Delgado's phone was hitting a tower at that location. Just to be specific, would you tell the jury where that is?
Again, I can give you the general area of what it says because I don't know Dallas.
That's fine.
Okay. It's near the intersection of where North Houston, Harry Hines comes in on highway.
And those are the cell service records?
Correct.
Is Celebrite the recognized way to do this?
Celebrite is one of the mobile phone data recovery softwares out there that's used many times by police departments.
All right, if I was going to do this, we had my phone here, what would we basically have to do this?
To do just an examination.
Just to generally describe for the jury, what would you do? I give you my phone, you want to get a Celebrite report, how's it done?
Okay. Basically, you would have to protect the phone, which means you would put it in airplane mode, and you would double check the record or your device to make sure that all communications with the tower, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth are turned off. Then the device is then hooked up to a Celebrite machine, physical machine, or a computer with the Celebrite software on it. The Celebrite software will then recognize, you will then be given a screen where you can then fill in information. Who is the extracting detective? Who is it for? Any other type of information that you wish to have included in the report.
Is that routinely done by law enforcement?
It should be.
Was that done here?
It appears to be.
All right, now looking at that Celebrite report related to Crystal Cortez, from that Celebrite report, can you see the data that is physically on the phone?
You could see the data that they recovered.
Come join the Pob Man and let his investigative reporting literally blow your mind.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
Listen to Pavarotti. Can I be your superhero?
Hello, welcome to The Revealing. I am your host, Pavarotti, and I'm here to bring you an investigative report on some really interesting things surrounding the Idaho 4 case. And, you know, it seems like once I get on something, I'm like a dog with a bone. I just can't stop until I really dive in and get all the details and really just pick the fly shit out of the black pepper. And that's what I've done again for you in this episode. I think you will agree by the end, and I certainly would like to hear your thoughts. And I implore people out there that watch this video to watch it with an open mind. give it a chance, watch the entire thing, and then give me your opinion at the end. Because if you do that and you keep an open mind, I think you're going to start to see the things that I've been looking at in this. You know, it's easy for me to go through and do all the research and try to put everything together to bring you my opinions on things and on the things surrounding this case. What's difficult is to make it clearly, not only easily understood in a video, but also to give you enough of the receipts so that you can clearly understand why I've come to the conclusions that I come to. Sometimes it's hard for me to get all the receipts in there, so it's easy to say, well, Pop, we just think you're wrong. And I can appreciate that because I haven't shown you everything that I've seen to come to my conclusions. But I want to do that in this one. I think I've got enough together for you to really get the big picture of what I'm discussing. And you know, it's interesting. I was watching my guy Dago the other day having a conversation with who was he having a conversation with? I think it was Eddie and Jesse, discussing, you know, whether or not to trust Ann Taylor and team versus Dr. Turvey. And I know that's been a big bone of contention here lately with a lot of people. And one thing I do want to point out, I mean, because I hear this all the time, yeah, she's a public defender. How can you trust her, Pav? Well, in all fairness, right now, because she is Bryan Kohberger's attorney, I mean, we literally know that from the cease and desist letter that her, Bicka Barlow, and Elisa Massoff put out telling Turvey to shut up and attacking his credibility. I mean, that's what we got to work with, y'all. If you had some other attorney if I had my choice, yeah, I would have who I call Master Bates, who was doing the post-conviction relief for Zach Adams, which, by the way, it's been almost, it's over 5 months now, and the judge still hasn't ruled on the Zach Adams post-conviction relief, which should have been a slam dunk. And if they don't rule in his favor, then I think it's, you know, mental torture to make somebody wait that long waiting on a judge ruling. I don't understand it. Maybe I need to look. I haven't looked it up here lately. I haven't seen anything come across, so I'm assuming he still hadn't ruled. But I mean, I think you know, I love old Dago. He's great, and I appreciate all those guys, and I really I had a lot of empathy for Eddie on that show as people were making arguments like they didn't believe that Bicka Barlow put out the statement because it was just on letterhead, and they hadn't even looked at the statement and seen that Bicka Barlow, Massoff, and Ann Taylor, all three signed it. And then they started to argue about, well, wait a minute though, if you sign something, it's just like at work. You know, if the boss tells me to sign it, I sign it. I'm like, goodness, because I could feel his frustration as he was hearing that. I mean, when you have documentation that's important to sign, what do? You go get your attorney to look at it before you sign it to make sure it's okay for you to sign it. So to think an attorney would not look at the documentation that they're signing before they sign it and it has no meaning blows my ever-loving mind. Yeah, I mean, you can easily take from that Bicka Barlow meant every bit as much of that as much as Ann Taylor. But considering Ann Taylor and team is what we have to work with, that's what we have to work with. Because in the end, in my opinion, it's what's best for the guy sitting in prison that has no evidence against him, that is not guilty of this crime, because all the evidence that they filed against him, we have disproven. We've disproven. I mean, the main evidence in the case was a scar. Scar's nothing. But what I want to do in this one is really dive in on some things that I believe are very important in this case. I'm going to cover this new investigation. I've dove into the sheriff's office investigation, what they're investigating, and I've put together my best interpretation of who I believe the leaker is and the implications of what could happen if that leaker has or will be identified for the Bryan Kohberger defense team, and the implications are enormous, y'all. So sit back, keep an open mind, listen to what old Pav has to say. If you disagree, you disagree, but please wait till I present everything before you vehemently disagree, okay? And by the way, you may want to hold on to your hats and put your hands over your ears, because I know your mind's going to be blown, and I don't want anything coming out your ears and getting on your clothes. Let's do this. So let's dig in just a little bit deeper on what's going on right now, specifically with the second leak investigation, the one that's being conducted by the Ada County Sheriff's Office. After a little research, I have located the man in charge of this leak investigation, and it's Detective Matthew Tadikin of the Ada County Sheriff's Office. Now, a little background on Tadikin. As you would probably guess, he is a former task force officer at the United States Drug Enforcement Administration. So he was a drug task force officer for the DEA for years. Then he went to work for the Ada County Sheriff's Department. He is currently serving as an internal affairs investigator. And in recent years, Tadikin transitioned into a specialized part-time role for the department, serving as an internal affairs project coordinator. This background in handling sensitive internal departmental compliance and misconduct makes him uniquely suited to head a leak investigation. And I think it's really important for us to dive in deep on the investigation that he is conducting and what we know about this investigation, because a lot of it's hush hush. And when I think about like what Turvey says, that, he was contacted by this Matthew Tadikin, and he refused to cooperate, refused to have any conversations, and he blamed Dan Taylor for even asking him or letting him know that he could participate in that investigation. I find that very odd, and I'm going to tell you why here in just a second. Because when we start tracking what Tadikin's primary objective is, and that's tracing the digital chain of custody for the file package aired by the Dateline episode. And we know from watching the Dateline episode that there were three main things that were broadcast on that episode. One was never before seen video of suspect vehicle in the neighborhood. Now, it is quite apparent that you have multiple people involved in this leak. I mean, not one person, not one entity should have access to everything that was leaked. So you've got somebody that leaked video of suspect vehicle. But then you also had all of the information from Kohberger's actual cell phone, including his pictures. And more importantly, they had all of his location information that they were disclosing during that episode, down to the days that Kohberger went to Moscow. So that's two entirely different things in itself. You could have all the phone extraction information and you still wouldn't have the location information, which tells me that that's two different leakers. But then the most egregious of all was the animation that Dateline put out during that episode from leaked information that showed, y'all know I'm going to say it, Xana going up to the third floor, interrupting the attacker, and then being chased back to her bedroom where she was attacked, and the reasons for that animation. So when you think about who this Tadikin is interviewing, I find it interesting. He's been actively spearheading interviews with legal professionals and forensic experts who had authorized access to the case's discovery database. He has interviewed digital forensics expert Cy Ray multiple times since late last year, and has requested an interview with defense expert Brent Turvey, who has thus far declined to participate.
Now they're doing a separate criminal investigation. And I don't know when they started that, but they contacted me in January. Then, most interestingly, and I didn't respond, by the way, I didn't respond to that. And I have no intention of responding to it. I wouldn't talk to the police without a subpoena and a defense attorney with me, just because I don't trust the process in Idaho at this moment.
Now, see, when I read that, I have to sit back and I have to look at that twice myself. How about y'all? because Cy Ray is an expert the same as Brent Turvey. He's interviewed Cy Ray apparently multiple times since last year, which means that Cy Ray is actively cooperating with the detective. Yet, for some reason, Brent Turvey has given us a lot of reasons why he wouldn't cooperate with that detective in any way, and obviously hasn't. He's declined to participate in any of his interviews. So what makes Brent Turvey different than Cy Ray, I would ask you? I don't know, but let's dig in a little deeper. Here's something that I've found that's kind of interesting as I really dive in deep to our case here. One of the things that Turvey mentions in interviews is how the defense team kept its experts in what he referred to as a silo.
And even the guilt phase experts who were trying to reconstruct the crime or determine the events and the actions, we didn't talk to each other. We were very much compartmentalized.
Meaning they didn't have access to each other and each other's information. And I find that very interesting when I start to look at the experts that the defense had in this case, especially around a couple of different areas. Number one, around the location information of the cell phone data. The defense had two experts. One was Cy Ray. We're all familiar with Cy. He was added to the defense team April 17th, 2024. And we're very familiar with all of the things that Cy Ray testified to and all the things that he was working on. The person that we're much less familiar with, though, is defense expert Tom Slavinsky. You see, Tom Slavinsky does the same thing that Cy Ray does. And we have no idea when he was added to the defense team. But one thing that I noticed throughout this entire pretrial case was how Cy Ray was mentioned so many times in the beginning, but as we got closer and closer to trial, I was finding Cy Ray listed much less. And I started seeing Tom Slavinsky mentioned more prominently. So when we look at the participation of the experts, it seems like Cy Ray started out the main expert, but as you got closer to trial, what he was working on seemed to go down dramatically, and then more things seemed to be pushed towards defense expert Tom Slavinsky, which tells me I believe that it was Slavinsky that was actually going to be the defense expert at trial, not Cy Ray. And I can tell you that on January 16th, 2025, defense filed expert disclosures for Cy Ray and Tom Slavinsky regarding cellular forensics. Same thing. The following anticipated testimony is in response to Ray's case report dated January 21st, 2025, and this is the prosecution's rebuttal. But they're rebutting Ray's case report and Slavinsky's final report dated January 22nd, 2025. Now, you see old Pav, when he picks fly shit out of black pepper, I've always said this, words matter, especially in these legal writings. So when I see little things like Ray's case report and Slavinsky's final report, I noticed it seems like those are two different things, even though they're the experts for the same thing. So let's talk about that for a second. What's the difference between a case report and a final report? Well, the case report is the shield. This may be a responsive report designed strictly to criticize, pick apart, or debunk the specific methods used by the plaintiff's expert. So Cy Ray pointing out where the prosecution's case was in error. They didn't do things right. Yet the final report, the sword, this report establishes the defense's own independent, standalone conclusion about what actually happened, regardless of what the plaintiff claims. So it seems to me that Cy Ray, if he was even going to be called in court, would have pointed out deficiencies in what the state did in their case. But Slavinsky was the real expert that was going to come in and lay out the defense's case. on the CSLI, which I find interesting in this. So it's really starting to make me believe that the Kohberger defense team was going to rely on the expert opinion of Slavinsky at trial, not Cy Ray. And I know a lot of people love Cy Ray, and this isn't a dig on Cy Ray. It's just a fact. So there's that. And I wanted to point that out because I see this happening in two different experts for the defense. It seems like they rely on both experts for a while, but then they kind of move away from them and just focus on the expert that they were going to use at trial. And that happens again when we get into Brent Turvey and Matthew Nodal. And once again, you'll see in this anticipated rebuttal testimony, on January 23rd, 2025, the defense filed expert disclosures for Matt Nodal and Brent Turvey regarding crime scene analysis. The following anticipated testimony is in response to Nodal's scene reconstruction, dated January 22nd, 2025, and Turvey's crime scene analysis, dated January 22nd, 2025. Once again, I have to stop, sit back, pick fly shit out of black pepper, because they're using different terms here when they're describing what they're going to be rebutting between Matt Nodal and Brent Turvey. Now, both of them are regarded as their crime scene analysis. So both of them are doing crime scene analysis. However, Nodal's scene reconstruction is in addition to his crime scene analysis, and Turvey is just crime scene analysis. He doesn't have any crime scene reconstruction. So what does that mean? By the way, Matthew Nodal, the defense's crime scene analyst, joined Bryan Kohberger's defense team January 3rd, 2023, just about 4 days after Kohberger was arrested, and he was with the defense team the entire time. Where Dr. Brent Turvey joined the defense team on October 30th, 2024, and as I'm going to come to the conclusion, was only a part of the defense team for a couple of months in this case, and it looks to me like the defense was going to go with Matthew Nodal's crime scene expertise over Brent Turvey, and Brent Turvey was just kind of pushed to the side, and I don't think he liked that. But here's the difference, just so we know. As stated in the report, Brent Turvey submitted a report on crime scene analysis, where Matthew Nodal submitted reports on crime scene analysis and crime scene reconstruction. Now, crime scene analysis is the foundational evaluation of individual pieces of evidence to understand what they are, whereas crime scene reconstruction is the subsequent synthesis of those analytical findings to determine the chronology sequence of events. So to tell you the difference, what Turvey would have been discussing is identifying and evaluating specific pieces of evidence. What is the evidence and what does it tell us? Lab testing, blood stain pattern examination, and ballistics profiling. And the crime scene analysis would be done first, prerequisite data collection and testing. So that's what Turvey would be doing, but that's also what crime scene analyst Matthew Nodal would do as well. So like Turvey said, they were in silos doing their own independent evaluations of this.
And even the guilt phase experts who were trying to reconstruct the crime or determine the events and the actions, we didn't talk to each other. We were very much compartmentalized.
But Turvey never made it over to crime scene reconstruction like Nodal did. You see, Nodal, on top of doing all of this, would establish a timeline, a step-by-step sequence of events. How, when, and in what order did this happen? Using the scientific method, deductive logic, and 3D trajectory modeling. And I know that he was an expert in trajectory modeling by 3D. Done second, built entirely on the results of the analysis. So once he does the analysis, then he does the reconstruction. Here's what's interesting, though. When you look at this from this perspective, and then you start to really dive in on what really these crime scene experts came up with in their conclusions. And I have to go to Paulette Sutton, the state's expert, and the conclusions that she came up with that had to be corrected, not by Dr. Brent Turvey, but by Matthew Nodal. And there is a couple of them in particular that are extremely important in this case that I say over and over, and people get mad at me for bringing it up, but it's not me bringing it up, y'all. It's Matthew Nodal had to correct them on the importance of these particular samples in the crime scene. And I see people just overlook them like they're not important. And I go, well, they're important enough to where Nodal destroyed Paulette Sutton's report and in turn Brent Turvey's. But the first thing we have to point out is item number 42, because Paulette Sutton incorrectly thought item 42, which was this blood spatter on the door of Maddie Mogan's door, she incorrectly, because of the numbering system, thought that 42 came back to Xana Kernodle's DNA, which means that would have put together an entire scenario around Xana going to the third floor, interrupting the attacker and being injured as she interrupted the attacker on the third floor, leaving her blood. Big time analysis, putting Xana actually being attacked on the third floor first. So when Matthew Nodal goes through and explains to her that that is incorrect, that you got the numbers wrong because of the way Payne numbered everything, well, then she had to correct her report. Oh, sorry, Xana, I guess, doesn't have any evidence that she went upstairs. So then they moved on. Oh, and by the way, then he also had to point out to her that stain 48 that she thought was 42 was actually 48, which was the swipe on Maddie's door. And he goes on to point out, and this stain was shown to be linked to Kaylee Gonzalez. So what I really like about Matthew Nodal is he points out the actual stains that I point out specifically in his reports, like the fact 42 is not Xana, the fact 48 is an outside swipe in that belongs to Kaylee, not Maddie, and of course, stain F, because Sutton thought that stain F belonged to Xana Kernodle on the pong table. And then Nodal had to explain to her, that's not Xana's. That blood's never tested. It's likely Kaylee's because her blood was tested on top of the pong table. And then she had to correct that in her report. But again, putting Xana being attacked and her blood in the living room, which when you stop and think about it, if you watch the Dateline leak episode and even the as-get animation of that she made for them, they said they had Xana going upstairs being attacked, and they had an inside source that said Xana's blood was on the door, and then Xana's blood was all over the living room, and that's where that whole scenario came from. Matthew Nodal doesn't agree with that scenario one bit, and he had to go through and explain it to the experts in his report, or he didn't explain it to them. He had to go through in his rebuttal and explain it to them that their report was incorrect because they didn't even know how the numbering system works, and they're experts. And I say them because it was the exact same thing with Turvey's report. Nodal, for whatever reason, did not have any consulting with Turvey. Turvey didn't know and didn't figure out the numbering system either, and he came up with a similar report as Paulette Sutton. So you have Nodal and Turvey on completely different ends of actually knowing the truth about the crime scene, which is very strange. But then I think about this, y'all. I think about Turvey and Whitcomb in their book, right? And I'm going to read you a quote from their book. And this one hit me hard because I read it yesterday as I was reading this to my members. And I thought to myself, wow, this is exactly what Turvey and Whitcomb are out giving interviews about to this very day. And it says it word for word in the book. It says, in the kitchen, you have Xana eating her food, and she's in there on TikTok. And that's when she sees who it is, Turvey surmised. And she runs, and these are quotations that Whitcomb is quoting Turvey in this book. And she runs down the hallway, and the killers are covered in blood. They have blood on their hands. They have blood on their clothes. They got blood on their faces. They have their knives and whatever other weapons they were carrying, which we don't know because no weapons were recovered from the scene. But she sees them, sees the weapon, and she runs down the hallway toward Ethan to wake him up and get help. the offender is able, I think, is able to get close enough to injure her, which is why we have her blood in the living room, on the walls, and some of the horizontal surfaces. So Turvey is being quoted by Whitcomb as having Xana's blood in the living room, which is exactly what Matthew Nodal had to correct Paulette Sutton about, which obviously would have corrected Turvey on his report as well. And that's why internal communications say that the Kohberger defense team was actually moving away from Turvey because his independent analysis completely differed from what Matthew Nodal had put together. Turvey was likely going to be an ousted expert and wasn't going to get any notoriety by testifying in this big case. But this is something that I don't think anybody can ignore. The fact that this is exactly what's in Whitcomb's book that Turvey told Whitcomb, and the fact that they're out actually giving interviews and trying to back up this part of the book, shows me a little bit of what's called consciousness of guilt, y'all. And here's what I mean. Because according to Turvey, again, the defense experts were kept in a silo, no contact with each other, and they were doing different things. Well, Turvey submits his report on January 23rd, 2025, as you see right here, January 22nd, 2025. Same day as Nodal's. And then on February 17th, 2025, Sutton submits her rebuttal that would have informed Turvey of the misnumbering system. So even if Nodal didn't go, Turvey, you got all your samples wrong, dude, and your whole crime scene recreation is wrong because of that. Well, if that didn't happen, well, no doubt when Sutton submits her report explaining how those numbers are incorrect and all those samples are wrong, Turvey would know at that point that his was wrong as well. So that puts February 17th as the date that Turvey unequivocally would know that his entire scenario in the living room with Xana was wrong because of the numbering system. Yet to this day, he's doing interviews talking about that same statement. I believe that's happening, in my personal opinion, just to back up the fact that it's in that book and there's no way around that now. And even if Chris Whitcomb, this is the problem, y'all, even if Chris Whitcomb was the recipient of the leak, meaning he was the recipient of the leaker's information and he gave it to Dateline and he is Dateline, it doesn't matter because he can't be held liable as the leaker because he's afforded protections due to being a journalist. So they wouldn't go after Whitcomb. He's just like Dateline. They would have to go after the person that leaked the information. So when I put this timeline together, and I know that Turvey would have known that those samples were incorrect on February 17th, 2025. Looky here, just a few months later, May 9th, we got a Dateline leak that has all that information from these two's report in the Dateline leak episode. So if Turvey was ousted by the defense team and he was a little bit upset, could he be the one that leaked everything to Whitcomb and Dateline? I don't know. You tell me, but I do know this. The book Broken Plea was absolutely published April 28, 2026. In the book is Turvey's literal quote talking about evidence that he knew was incorrect after February the 17th, 2025. So how is a quote from Turvey in this book that is incorrect and he would have known it was incorrect after this date? Well, then the only thing I can put together is he gave that information, if he gave it, to Whitcomb prior to February 17th, 2025. And that's likely when Dateline would have gathered that information as well. And these interviews that he's doing is just trying to play dumb on what's in that book like he didn't know about this, when absolutely he would have. But let me tell you, you really have to pay close attention when you listen to Whitcomb and Turvey both give interviews discussing the scenario around the living room and what happened and the results from the DNA. because when I listened to Whitcomb describe what happened, he is very consistent with what Turvey told him that he put in his book.
The beer pong table was in front of the door leading from the bottom of the staircase, Dylan's door on the right, kitchen on the left. It goes up a little 6-inch step right there, goes through the beer pong table, turns left, and goes down the hallway to her room, right? Yeah. Paulette Sutton's report shows, I don't know the number, but I would say it far exceeds a dozen. It's a significant number of blood transfers, and blood transfers can be cast off, it can be spatter, it can be smudges where somebody touches it. And if you look at her report, you will see that all is diluted in any way. It looks like a crime scene, as people might imagine. From the bottom of the staircase landing through the living room, turning left down the hallway, there's blood everywhere. There's blood on the beer pong table. There is blood on the knee wall on the far side of the beer pong table. There is blood on the walls on the far side of the staircase. There's blood turning left down the hallway. There's blood by that little console, that little chrome brass-looking console. There is blood on the molding on the floor. There's blood on the hallways getting to Xana's room, and there's blood on the door. There is zero blood anywhere on the floor. They never found a single drop of blood on the floor. And Paulette Sutton's report, now she's the expert hired by the prosecution. This was going to go to trial, right? This is the prosecution's expert witness. She says in her report, all of those blood stains were tracked to 4 people. They were tracked to Kaylee and Maddie, meaning the blood was transferred from the 3rd floor. She says these people will never, they had a bloodletting injury on the 3rd floor. They never left that room. Therefore, her words, therefore the blood was transferred from that room downstairs. Okay. Then it was transferred across there into the bedroom. Once it's inside the bedroom, it's the same thing. It's carnage. It's a nightmare of blood. Somehow, Kaylee's and Maddie's blood were found on various parts of that common area of the 2nd floor, the living room.
Right.
And all of it in her report, in each case, I should say, in each case except for one, which we're going to come back to, in each case except for one, the blood was diluted with an unknown substance, and that's in quotations, right? Blood was diluted with an unknown substance. Some of that blood was determined to be Xana's blood.
You see, I noticed what Whitcomb is saying now is exactly what's quoted out of his book, that the living room had Xana's blood, just like Turvey quoted to him. Right? This is a quote from Turvey. Turvey surmised the offender is able to get close enough to injure her, which is why we have her blood in the living room on the walls and some of the horizontal surfaces. So he's being consistent with what he literally puts in quotations that Turvey told him. So as of right now, it seems like he's going with this old information. Yet I find it strange that Dr. Turvey avoids this like the plague, like he is aware of it now, and he wasn't aware of it when he gave this statement to Whitcomb, which could have only been prior to February 17th, 2025. Here's how Turvey describes it now.
This offender went right upstairs to the 3rd floor, attacked the girls and killed the girls up there, then encountered Xana in the kitchen on the way out, and she ran down the hallway, and they chased her down and killed her and killed Ethan as well. So,
what evidence? I think in Chris's book, he mentioned that it appears there's evidence that Xana was first encountered, at least by the killer or killers, in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Is there evidence of that? Because a lot of people have tied, there was initially some an indication that Xana's blood was on the beer pong table, which turns out that was a mistake by Sutton. What other evidence was there of Xana initially being encountered in the kitchen area?
Ethan was drunk and asleep in the bedroom. Right? They'd all been out drinking that night. Okay, they were all intoxicated. So he's asleep in the bedroom. She orders her food. She receives her food, and she's eating it in the kitchen. Part of it can be found in the kitchen where she's eating, and she's on TikTok. going through TikTok and doing stuff. Then you find some of that food in her bedroom. All right. Those two things show she was started out in the kitchen eating and then wound up in the bedroom because that's where we know that's where she died. Well, the beer pong table is boring to me. I'm not interested in that. There's so many other bigger issues to talk about. The beer pong table has no relevance in my mind whatsoever.
But you see, that's the crux of the matter, because today the beer pong table has no relevance and there's no evidence of Xana's blood in the kitchen, and you change it to, well, she's eating and there's food in the bedroom, and leave out all the things that you are literally quoted, Turvey surmise, quotation marks, in the book saying her blood is in the living room on the walls and some horizontal surfaces, which tells me that as of today, he knows that is not true. So when did he not know that was not true? And it could only be prior to February 17th, 2025, which tells me that that quote in the book had to be given to Whitcomb prior to February 17th, 2025, which means it is almost certain, in my humble opinion, not slandering anybody, that Turvey's the leaker. And here's the thing. Whitcomb can't be held responsible for the leak, all right? When I start looking at the investigation, though, that Tadikin is doing into the leakers, we hear Turvey say, okay, well, it should tell you that the leaker came from the defense if the investigators are investigating and asking to question experts for the defense. Well, that may be true, but the only people we know on the defense team that the investigator is asking to question is not the entire defense team. Apparently, he's only asked to question two of the experts, both of them who was likely not going to play a big part in the actual trial, one being Cy Ray. And apparently, he's talked to Cy Ray multiple times, and Cy Ray doesn't have any problem talking to him, which tells me Cy Ray has nothing to hide. But when he tries to talk to defense expert Brent Turvey, he declines to participate and causes a big stir about it. So is that consciousness of guilt? I don't know. You tell me. But here's what I do know. Cy Ray's met with those investigators at least twice, indicating he has nothing to hide. Turvey's refused to cooperate with the investigation altogether publicly. What's the point of all this, Pav? Well, it's the legal remedies, y'all, from a guy, Bryan Kohberger, who's sitting up there in a prison cell because he was forced into a plea deal because these leakers leaked information that was BS and absolutely destroyed the jury pool. So he had to take a freaking plea deal. So the leakers, in my opinion, are absolutely responsible for the plea deal that's got him sitting in prison right now. So while y'all are all mad at Ann Taylor, you should be mad at the person who leaked the information. And I just gave you a very clear outline of who the Ada County Sheriff's Office apparently thinks is possibly the leaker and other reasons why he would think that. But here's the real end game, though, because the legal remedies of a rogue expert leaking confidential information that poisons a jury pool are extensive. There is many legal avenues the Kohberger defense team could go down if a rogue expert leaked that information and it's found out. The current defense team, for example, just one of the many legal remedies, they could cite constructive, ineffective assistance of counsel, which focuses on the structural breakdown of the 16th Amendment rather than the defense counsel's deficiency, which would allow the defense team to file ineffective assistance of counsel and still keep themselves in good regard because of their expert. Also, it would give the state a reason for them to say this is justice. While all this is happening, it wasn't our fault, it was a rogue expert, and all the blame goes on the leaker where that responsibility should be. But in the end, we know he couldn't have leaked at all. There has to be other actors as well. I imagine some of those are state actors, so I think it's going to be a conglomerate in the end. But in the end, a new trial, here's what would happen if they overturned the conviction and issued, they just go back to the beginning. They say, okay, we're gonna set a new trial date. This is the other ramification it would have, is they would almost certainly have to change the venue yet again, because the jury pool under this type of remedy would be declared legally poisoned. They would have to change the venue, which in turn would likely change the judge if the judge, much like John Judge, did not want to go with the venue change. So in the end, it would be a remedy that would not only get Bryan Kohberger a new trial, it would put the emphasis and blame where it belongs on the people that actually did the leaking, but it would also change the venue and remove Hippler as the judge in the case. It seems like a win all the way around for me, and that's why I focus on this stuff, y'all. Let me know your thoughts. So when people wonder why I keep going over this stuff, it's because of this. On May 9th, 2025, the Dateline episode leaked all this information. The people that leaked this information to the Dateline episode are the people that I hold the most responsible in this case for anything. And here's what I mean. Because on May 20th, 2025, the defense filed a motion to continue after that leak, focusing on the necessity to remedy the situation of the prejudice of highly inflammatory publicity released just weeks before the current trial date, including the recent Dateline NBC special and forthcoming books. And they went on to argue extensively about this. On May 20th, just 11 days after that episode was broadcast. So May 20th, they filed for the continuance saying this has destroyed us. Well, June 25th, 2025, Hippler denies that motion to continue. Not 7 days later, a plea deal is announced in the Kohberger case. So that tells me that the reason Bryan Kohberger was forced into a plea deal was due to that Dateline episode. So the people involved in leaking that information are the people directly responsible for Bryan Kohberger being forced into a plea deal, in my humble opinion. So when I find evidence against somebody that he is a possible leaker, you betcha I have an issue with them. And if you don't, then you don't care about that man in prison. And that's, again, in my humble opinion. Let me know your thoughts.